advancing against the lie foisted upon believers, known as the separation of church and state. This is America's wake-up call.
Welcome to America's Wake-Up Call. I'm your host, Craig Bergman, and this show is about knowing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. For believers, this is about knowing the truth of our calling, that we are a royal priesthood, made to be unto our God priests and kings to rule as kings upon the earth. So join with me today as we awaken you, the body of Christ, to discover and embrace your role and the duties of kingship through active participation in the electoral process, so that we can restore an America which reveres God, respects life, and enjoys liberty.
I am America.
Well, everybody, welcome to 2026 at America's Wake Up Call. I am your host, Craig Bergman, and in studio, Des Moines, Iowa, today, I have the wonderful, fabulous, intelligent, highly informed State House Oracle, Lauren Gideon.
Thanks so much for having me.
And we are going to be discussing a topic that is near and dear to both of our hearts, but you specialize in this, working for a group that deals with homeschooling and education. And of course, my longtime listeners know that I hate the Leviathan known as public education. So why don't we start right with the top, Lauren? Tell my guests just a little bit about your background, maybe go into how we got here today, and we'll just have a conversation here at the first part, and then we'll start the meat of the program.
Excellent. A little bit about me. I'm a second generation homeschool mother myself. I have 7 kids. I graduated too. We live just south of Des Moines on a little homestead. We're trying out some new adventures there. I've been homeschooling for, well, my oldest is 20, so 20 years, right? We start when they're born. And so it's a passion of mine. Being a second generation homeschool family, it wasn't a hard decision for me. It's something my parents normalized, and I'm very indebted to them for that. Actually, my parents started homeschooling me in 1991, which in the advocacy space, I have come to learn that that's a very important date for Iowans, because it is the first year that homeschooling was legal in Iowa. And so it was a big deal when my parents would do something that was they weren't the pioneers of people that are hiding in their houses, you know, in their basements or going to jail or anything, but they are very much on the front edge of homeschooling, doing something that was very strange. And so when it came time for me to choose an educational direction for my children, I was going back to and relying on the fact that they had normalized that for me. And I'm very thankful for that. And so I started out homeschooling my oldest, I think, so he was born in 2005, so around 2010. And I tried a lot of different approaches, and I said I had 7 kids, they're all born in a decade. So it was almost like I was adding a new student every year. And that became overwhelming quickly. I had all these grandiose ideas of this unschooling paradigm where I would curate a curriculum around each kid and their needs, their interests, which sounds so great with baby number 1. But then when you add the others, I was quickly drowning. We came into classical conversations then when he was in 4th grade, and with 4 students. And then we fell in love with classical education on top of homeschooling. Our educational journey has come in layers, and learning how to learn inside the classical space has been exciting, not only as a parent, but as a lifelong learner myself. It taught me a lot about what I love and my passions. And so in doing that, I've taken a lot of different directions. We've met in the political space before. And so it's through homeschooling and my own upbringing that I realized this is a space that I love. I'm passionate about both the experience and the process of, I love your intro there about being the sovereign of our country and how to exercise that role well under God. And also the background of our country's origins and pre-founding documents, things like that. So I've done a lot of different things, but ultimately it landed me in a role at Classical Conversations, where I'm now the Director of Government Relations for Classical Conversations. And a lot of my work is both incorporating the education of civics and American history and the principles of liberty, and then also the advocacy side. And so I get to see a lot of the patterns happening in the policy space across our country. Obviously, my first love is still Iowa politics and being on the front line in the conversations there. And so that's kind of our shared ground. Now, I'll back up and say, let's see, we had a conversation about homeschooling where you told this amazing story, because I didn't know these stories, and I don't think most Iowans or homeschool families do, on kind of the story behind home education in Iowa. That first, was really special to me. And then when I thought about the conversation that we're going to have in a little bit, that was the reason I said, Craig's the guy I'm going to talk to about this. And so I was wondering, for your listeners and people that might hear this, if you would retell some of those stories that you're aware of and how homeschooling came to be what it is today.
I would love to retell that story. I have told it all the time about my all-time favorite Iowa representative, the former Representative Tom Shaw from Lawrence, Iowa. And he was one of the three amigos when we had three great state reps down at the State House who would basically tell the governor and the majority leader, you do not have our votes. They are not constitutional. And we had a thin majority at the time. And the very short version, because I could do this for a long story, is Tom Shaw cast a deciding vote to fund the teachers union the large paycheck that Terry Branstad wanted to give them. And many people in the Tea Party thought that was a sellout and a betrayal. And I tell you, it was a ransom, because what he did in that bill is he got them to change one word from shall to may. And that may became maybe not. And that was the compliance. And that's why it's very important to this thing that we're about to talk about today, because what they want to do is forget all the statutory law. What we're going to tell you about, what Lauren's going to tell you about, and I'm going to attack with a big sword and an axe, is they want to enshrine public education as a constitutional mandate. Yeah, you should be scared to death right there, because all they then have to do, they don't have to outlaw, they don't have to repeal Tom's bill, they don't have to do anything of the kind. They can just say, you're out of compliance, grab your kids, run them off, throw them into the CPS system, and good luck raising the millions it will take to fight them and get your kids back 16 years later when they're adults. Okay, that is draconian. It is Leviathan. It is wicked and evil. But again, I want people to look at that history of Tom Shaw and the fact that he is the one who made Iowa go from literally the state that would chase children through the cornfield with National Guardsmen for truancy violation, cover of Life magazine, to the #1 freest. You don't have to tell the state. They don't have to know how many children you have. They don't have to know if they're in school or out of school. There's no testing, no standards. There is no mandate at all. It's may. And that is just a powerful freedom the other 49 lack. And somebody down there wants to make us #1 literally slaves. So I hope that covered that ground there, Lauren. Why don't you tell us how you heard about this bill, what you know what's in it, and anything you found out recently, because she texted me last night and said, you have a podcast. Do you want to talk about this? And I said, oh, yes, and here we are.
I would love to. I came to know about this bill because of our friends at Homeschool Iowa. They alerted me to the fact that it had been filed. And all I have is a text. So honestly, I don't know the background story. I'm one of those people that assumes, I bet these people had some really good intentions. And even if I don't know those things, I'm happy not to, because the text speaks for itself. It's very clear. All those things that you're saying have been undone over time to return the proper authority back to parents is about to go the complete opposite direction. And so without any background, I feel like I'm innocent here of throwing anybody under the bus because I don't know. But I do know what the text says, and I do know how that will be used against families going forward, should this make it to the ballot.
Why don't we pull that text up on our magic little device here and read it verbatim so that everyone else knows. And of course, if you know me, I'm a prolific writer as well on my Facebook page and X. I always like to say Twitter still, and other infrastructures. So I am going to write a long post about this as well. But this needed a real, dare I say it, classical conversation.
It does.
Got the plug in there.
Well, the hard thing before we begin, we're going to talk about education. So if this makes it to the ballot, it forces voters to vote against education, which is it's very, very taboo because it's like healthcare, food, shelter, clothing, education. It ranks right up there. And so it's a very scary thing if the conversation should get that far. We're hoping it stops before we get that far, and the people that are informed and have the authority to stop this do. So I'm going to read it. It's Senate Joint Resolution SJR 2005, Section 1. This is what it says. The following amendment to the Constitution of the State of Iowa is proposed. Article 1 of the Constitution of the State of Iowa is amended by adding the following new section, Section 24A. Right to a public education. The state shall provide all youths of this state. Now, you heard shall, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
The state of Iowa shall provide all youths of the state with a comprehensive education that meets or exceeds national standards. Oh, we're going to tie to the federal system too. Perfect. Okay, through a system of public schools. I like to call them government schools. Well,
it's a system, all right.
And competent, okay, so state decides competency, competent educators. Such educations shall include instruction in reading, literature, mathematics, science, technology, history, social science, public affairs and arts, human growth and development, and such other subjects as may be determined directly by the General Assembly or indirectly by a competent state agency of education pursuant to the General Assembly's delegation of authority.
Yikes, folks, we're coming up on our break here. We left you on a cliffhanger. That was not intentional, not designed. That is the providence of God. We'll be right back with it after this small break.
This is America's Wake Up Call. Stay tuned.
From the heartland of America's Silicon Prairie, powered by megawatts of green energy, Vortex strives to become the world's premier blockchain hardware and software development technology company. Rapidly approaching $1 trillion of worldwide value, the blockchain is a distributed ledger providing 21st century banking services, capital asset exchange, secured lending, and tamper-proof record-keeping of smart contracts, document management, and legal services. At our core, Vortex, through our subsidiarity of Liberty Coin Farms, we mine Bitcoins, collecting transaction fees from this new, borderless, stateless, anonymous, verifiable, and absolutely unhackable transfer of wealth. Vortex Blockchain Technologies.
Hey, 2350, 2355, 55, 2360. Do I hear 65, 65, 65, 70, now 75, 75, 80, and sold to the gentleman in the back room.
Our taxes are so complicated that even the IRS answers questions wrong almost half the time. That's because of decades of auctioning off our tax code into the hands of an army of Washington lobbyists. There must be a better way. And there is. The fair tax is a simple national sales tax that replaces the income tax and fully funds all government operations, including Social Security and Medicare. The fair tax ends all payroll withholding taxes while lowering most people's tax rates.
Take item 23 and apply a 28% premium after subtracting item 19, unless, of course, it's Thursday and a leap year, but only if Schedule F indicates sunspot activity on depreciation.
Help us win a better way. Together, we can write history. What's in it for you? Maybe the last penny you ever pay the IRS. Brought to you by Americans for Fair Taxation.
We have never been more divided, and no one seems to trust the voting process. The problems we face with our antiquated voting system can be solved with one word: blockchain. With the unique attributes of the blockchain, for the first time, we can have absolute trust. Our voting solution is open sourced and will be peer reviewable. No backdoors, hidden code, or proprietary secrets. Our solution is an asymmetrical, multi-keyed, enveloped data hash algorithm. That means simply that different passwords are used to reveal different portions of the data, which allows you to know with total certainty that your vote was counted exactly as you intended. We will have the prototype by next summer and a public functioning beta test for your smart device by the end of the year. If this sounds like the kind of integrity you'd like to see in our voting system, you too can join with us in making this future a reality. And you can invest in the success of the voting system of tomorrow. Thanks for doing your part.
This is America's wake-up call.
All right, guys, we are back at it here. And we left on quite a cliffhanger with the reading of the bill. And did we leave anything out, or do we need to just jump right into what we have?
We covered the complete meat of it. The rest of it was implementation. Since it's an amendment, it would go to the people eventually. But yes, that was the bulk of the content of the amendment.
Yeah, we were looking at the screen over here if you were watching during the commercial break and couldn't hear what we were talking about off record. Basically, there are about 4 Supreme Court decisions, many of them from the 1920s when this Leviathan was created. And I'd like to do a little recap on history to tell the people how we got here.
Excellent.
Okay?
Yes.
America had a system of education that was very local, very parental, and very parochial. You remember Little House on the Prairie? They had a church and it was the schoolhouse the rest of the time. Monday through Friday, the kids were learning or working on their farm with their family or doing whatever, Nellie running her grocery store and being Miss Gossip. And that was America. That's why we were #1 in the world. And Iowa was one of the last adoptees of the federal system, and why we were #1 among the 50 states for almost 75 years. But around the turn of the century, the Fabians and a bunch of other socialists got together and looked at the system that Prussia was using. This is prior to World War I. Okay, we have the Ottoman Empire still, we have Prussia, we have countries and states and empires, and Austria-Hungary that had alliances don't even exist anymore because they all got killed off in World War I, and we reshuffled the deck chairs on the international globalist cabal's Titanic. But all that being said, these people looked at a system and said, how do we deal with America? You know, today we have the WEF. In times past, we had the Council on Foreign Relations. In times past, we had the Bilderbergers or the Trilateral Commission or the Fabians. Look, the globalists, Satanists, and that's what they are. Making no point, not hiding my mouth behind the microphone. Satanic-ists have been pushing global education. They have been pushing this control, because God instituted the church, the family, and government. And the family and the church share the role of education, and the government is the one that protects our rights. So they want to put a right in the Constitution to force you to have your children attend their European socialist system. And they had to do it incrementally. Okay, what they did at the turn of the last century, 100 years ago, was just because of the poor and downtrodden and the illiteracy of the gangs of New York and these big cities in Boston, and it never really affected everyone else. But they got government money, so they built nice schools instead of doing them in the churches.
If I can too, I love how you brought up the Prussians and the Fabians, and actually, the Prussians did come up with this idea on their own. Are you familiar with the story of Robert Owen?
I may not be. You share.
This is so exciting. It's the first day I'm going to give a history lesson to Craig Bergman.
It's how I learned my history lessons.
So actually, communism and the socialist collectivist education thing is a homegrown thing. Because we're the land of the free, we tolerate all sorts of ideas, even bad ones. And Robert Owen was a gentleman that came over, and he started a communist collectivist compound in New Harmony, Vienna, where he tried his best to create a socialist environment. And through the process, he realized that this idea that connected children to their family was so deeply ingrained. He said his comedy failed. I mean, surprise, surprise, right?
Communism has only failed everywhere it's been tried.
Just haven't done it hard yet. But kidding aside, so he surmised then through that experiment is I did not get the children away from their parents soon enough. And so he documented this in all of his writings that ended up getting to the King of Prussia's hands. And his goal was, I have to get these children away. And his intent, he has to destroy he called it the trilogy, the evil trilogy. And it was family tradition, like traditional marriage and families, and then private property, and systems of religion. So from the beginning, this was an anti-Christian movement. And even in his writings, he had later had a defector. So these people, they form a secret society, as all, crazy demonic things do. And so their goal was to influence the political space. And one of the gentlemen involved in this in New York documented, he was later converted, and he had so much guilt and shame for what he'd been a part of. He decided to out some of the stories. And so in his writings, he talked about, or Robert Owen's writings, about how he literally was communicating with the spirits as a part of this. So there is no secret from the beginning. This has been a systemic plan to destroy the things that are important to us.
Important to liberty.
Important to liberty and important to our faith. It was a direct attack on those things. And this idea then obviously was exported from the land of the free over to Prussia, which was the first model, which was an education for the people, by the people, completely captured.
And then their whole system of government failed and collapsed and doesn't even exist anymore.
Well, not only that, but right, like, what did this convert to? Prussia is pre-World War I, you said Germany. And so the state they were afraid of Napoleon was part of it. He lost, right? The King of Prussia lost, and he's like, never again. So we're going to create this huge nationalist identity where we're going to control the formation of our citizens through a public government system. And it was attractive enough that he implemented it. And then I think you're getting to Horace Mann, then that brought it back from Prussia to those poor immigrant children. Now, notice Horace Mann's children never spent one day in the government schools.
Notice neither do Barack Obama's or any other Democrats.
So talk about education.
They won't do that.
Education for thee, not for me. So a very intentional behavioral culture modifying agenda from the beginning, obviously, and then it's grown from there. From the beast it was in Massachusetts to cover the whole country. And so in America, we're very nostalgic, and we think very fondly about this thing that we think helped form.
It's my high school. I was captain of the football team.
And this is actually a novel thing that was imported, not from Americanism, but from statist ideas about control and shaping the next generation.
Yeah, well, I think the real question on that is always, and we're seeing it in Minnesota clearly, it's follow the money. Okay, the education, we don't have time to go deeply there, but we will sow some seed and come back to it another time.
Yes.
Lauren, I would love to have you on multiple times and get these informations out to the people and everything we have to do there. But 67% of your Iowa tax dollars are for public education. 67%. And Iowa borrows 40-50% of its money from the federal government because every state runs a deficit if the federal government shuts off their money. And it doesn't matter, okay? If they earmark it for transportation and highways, it's in one bucket. If they earmark it for welfare, it's in one bucket, okay? It's what, $9 billion now, and it was $6 billion back when Tom Shaw approved that terrible budget increase to purchase our freedom from a ransom of Terry Branstad and his teachers' unions that hated him. They hated him and betrayed him at every time, and he tried to please them like rhinos do. That's what they do. So we're talking about a lot of money. And it's obviously not enough for these guys because now they want to put it in the Constitution, which when they control 95% of the education in Iowa anyway, why do they need a constitutional amendment?
Exactly. I actually, just since we've talked, I've been doing some research, and there's two other states that are running a similar amendment. So it tells me it's not a homegrown issue, because it's part of a concerted effort. And so actually, before I even knew about this, I had been doing some research just about state constitutions and how they codify education. And Iowa is kind of unique in that our constitution guarantees funding, but there's no constitutional mandate for children to attend government schools. And that has provided a degree of freedom and a place for us to work within that to craft, pathways of freedom. And so what we have is unique and precious. I have no idea who would want to ruin that for Iowans.
And once again, I hear the background music coming in right as Lauren hits a crescendo. So this is a divine intervention, I think, that we're having here in this segment. What do we want to hit when we come back from the break?
Let's unpack the amendment. There's a lot in there that we need to cover.
Okay, I think our next segment is a little short, so we'll do that for unpacking, and then we'll follow it up with what the heck can we do about this? Who do you call? Who do you go to?
This is America's Wake-Up Call. Stay tuned.
Hey, 2350, 2355, 55, 2360. Do I hear 65, 65, 65, 70, now 75, 75, 80, and sold to the gentleman in the back room.
Our taxes are so complicated that even the IRS answers questions wrong almost half the time. That's because of decades of auctioning off our tax code into the hands of an army of Washington lobbyists. There must be a better way. And there is. The fair tax is a simple national sales tax that replaces the income tax and fully funds all government operations, including Social Security and Medicare. The fair tax ends all payroll withholding taxes while lowering most people's tax rates.
Take item 23 and apply a 28% premium after subtracting item 19, unless, of course, it's Thursday and a leap year, but only if Schedule F indicates sunspot activity on depreciation.
Help us win a better way. Together, we can write history. What's in it for you? Maybe the last penny you ever pay the IRS. Brought to you by Americans for Fair Taxation.
From the heartland of America's Silicon Prairie, powered by megawatts of green energy, Vortex strives to become the world's premier blockchain hardware and software development technology company. Rapidly approaching $1 trillion of worldwide value, the blockchain is a distributed ledger providing 21st century banking services, capital asset exchange, secured lending, and tamper-proof record-keeping of smart contracts, document management, and legal services. At our core, Vortex, through our subsidiary of Liberty Coin Farms, we mine Bitcoins, collecting transaction fees from this new borderless, stateless, anonymous, verifiable, and absolutely unhackable transfer of wealth. Vortex Blockchain Technologies.
We have never been more divided, and no one seems to trust the voting process. The problems we face with our antiquated voting system can be solved with one word: blockchain. With the unique attributes of the blockchain, for the first time, we can have absolute trust. Our voting solution is open sourced and will be peer reviewable. No backdoors, hidden code, or proprietary secrets. Our solution is an asymmetrical, multi-keyed, enveloped data hash algorithm. That means simply that different passwords are used to reveal different portions of the data, which allows you to know with total certainty that your vote was counted exactly as you intended. We will have the prototype by next summer and a public functioning beta test for your smart device by the end of the year. If this sounds like the kind of integrity you'd like to see in our voting system, you too can join with us in making this future a reality. And you can invest in the success of the voting system of tomorrow. Thanks for doing your part.
This is the sound of our current 10,000-page tax code hitting the floor. This is the sound of the proposed fair tax law that eliminates the IRS, all federal payroll taxes, and the dreaded income tax. It's so simple that even a child can understand it, and it untaxes the poor, fully funds the federal government, and supercharges our economy. To win fair tax legislation, the roar of the American people will have to drown out the voices of an army of Washington, D.C. tax lobbyists. We must end the auctioning off of our tax code. Why? Because this is the sound of what is now withheld from your paycheck. And this is the sound of what could be the last penny you ever pay the IRS. Help us write history. What's in it for you? Maybe the last penny you ever pay the IRS.
This message brought to you by IowaFairTax.com.
You stuff your pockets while Rome is burning. I've got a feeling that the tide is turning.
This is America's wake-up call.
Well, we are back again with our middle segment here, and we were going to run through basically the meat of it here before we get into how to kill it.
So let's just start from the beginning. We can go clause by clause. The very first words, it opens with a right to a public education.
Yeah, how can you have a right to the labor and services of somebody else? I'm sure they're going to get teachers who would volunteer for that, especially for the pay. And most of them would be administrators, which is what we've seen happen in the last 75 years. It went from teacher pay to now what teachers are like 15-25% of the budget for a school.
Right. And I think actually this idea that is deeply rooted in Americans' minds that we do have this right to education, whether or not it's explicitly stated, actually, I think has been the gateway to all sorts of socialist ideas. Because it starts with the right to education, which education is not free. So if you're going to guarantee something, you're going to guarantee that someone has the right to something they did earn and somebody else lost the right to something they did earn. You can't not have that. And so when it comes to healthcare and all these trickle down other issues, I think really it starts with education. We accepted that false premise first, and it's only gone downhill from there. Also, like, who is guaranteed a right in this amendment? It's very interesting. It says, let's see, the state shall provide all youths. So now we're dabbling with something kind of novel, kind of not. It's been slowly growing. We're talking about children's rights, which, again, who doesn't love children? Who doesn't love rights of children? The problem is it's not what it seems.
Well, the real problem that comes right from that root immediately, my legal mind sees it and hears it, is little Susie thinks she's a boy, and the parents don't, but she now has a right constitutionally. And her parents, there is no constitutional right to raise your children. There is no constitutional right to keep your children. It's implied, but it's not in the law. And now the law says Susie has a right and she can hire a lawyer, or a lawyer can hire Susie for her, take her away from you, brainwash her to say whatever she wants to say. She's terrified of you, so they're going to record it off site and just present it to a judge who's in a family court and not in a real court where you have constitutional. Dude.
Well, it's complete linguistic capture too. So our declaration says, right, all men are created, or all men endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. So we get the idea of rights there, and this is governments are instituted among men to protect rights. Okay, so we are operating on that paradigm, and that's why this linguistic capture is so dangerous. Is because if we say we're going to borrow this language and we're going to call it a right, and then we're going to say it's our obligation to protect rights. And so actually what's going to happen is we're going to leverage this language to, I'm going to use air quotes, protect children from their parents.
Yeah.
That is the direction
Watch
this
it.
goes. This language is straight from the belly of the beast. It's straight from the UN, and it's trickling down to well-meaning, nice, fuzzy, warm people.
And here's where Lauren and I definitely disagree. I don't think any of them are warm, fuzzy, and nice. I say very carefully, forgive them not, Father. They know exactly what they are doing.
I would say I would agree with you on the front end. I think there's a lot of I would think there's parents out there that might be listening to this that do not understand the insidious nature behind this. And so I want to give them credit to say, do your research. Children's rights come straight from the UN. It was in a ballot initiative in Colorado last year. They're trying to work it in anywhere they can. And the goal looks like it's for children. The intent is against parents.
100%.
So it's really important. Anytime you see children having distinct rights separate from the rest of the population, that is the explicit intent behind those things.
What you have there is you have George Orwell.
Yes.
Some animals are more equal than others, and that is not the Constitution. That is not godly. That is satanic division.
Craig, you've been reading my Facebook posts again, I can tell. So no, so let's go on to the next section. It says, okay, shall provide all use with a comprehensive education. Okay, pause. I don't see the word comprehensive defined here. So who's going to decide that, Craig?
Well, I'll tell you who it isn't. The legislature won't do it. No legislature ever has. No Congress ever has. They say things like in the Obama healthcare, the secretary shall decide. So bureaucrats and administrators way down the pike, way unaccounted, will say, this is what's credentialed, this is what's certified, this is what we allow. And then the legislature will have to come back 2 years later after thousands or millions of children have been abducted from their parents or brainwashed and say, well, we didn't mean that. Or there'll be a whole cadre of elections and people going back and once Ronald Reagan said it best. In this life, the closest thing we have to immortality is a government program. And this will be immortal if it passes.
Right, and it's well, you have to say nobody cares what your intent was.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Well, the road to hell is paved with what?
Good intentions.
Good intentions. None of them are good.
Well, and I don't really, so in my experience with conversations that I've been having, the old argument is it's an emergency. We have to do something now. We can't take time to consider how and this will be used against families 20 years from now. And I really
It
regret
will
that.
be 20 minutes.
That is literally what we hired you to do, right? If you are a representation, you are to consider the long-term consequences of this. And that is what this nation was built on, is considering both human nature, the long-term consequences of the choices we made. And if we're going to advocate that now, we have no hope.
Yeah.
So, all right, back to our bill here. So, such education shall, where was I going to say? National standards, meets or exceed national standards. I hear the music, but that scares the heck out of me.
Oh, we know what national standards are. There was a study released recently that said 50% of elementary school teachers could not teach phonics because the colleges they went to didn't teach them phonics or how to teach phonics. So it's all Common Core, baby, and they're going to do it.
So much for federalism.
This is America's Wake Up Call. Stay tuned.
Hey, 2350, 2355, 55, 2360. Do I hear 65, 65, 65, 70, now 75, 75, 80, and sold to the gentleman in the back room.
Our taxes are so complicated that even the IRS answers questions wrong almost half the time. That's because of decades of auctioning off our tax code into the hands of an army of Washington lobbyists. There must be a better way. And there is. The fair tax is a simple national sales tax that replaces the income tax and fully funds all government operations, including Social Security and Medicare. The fair tax ends all payroll withholding taxes while lowering most people's tax rates.
Take item 23 and apply a 28% premium after subtracting item 19, unless, of course, it's Thursday and a leap year, but only if Schedule F indicates sunspot activity on depreciation.
Help us win a better way. Together, we can write history. What's in it for you? Maybe the last penny you ever pay the IRS. Brought to you by Americans for Fair Taxation.
From the heartland of America's Silicon Prairie, powered by megawatts of green energy, Vortex strives to become the world's premier blockchain hardware and software development technology company. Rapidly approaching $1 trillion of worldwide value, the blockchain is a distributed ledger providing 21st century banking services, capital asset exchange, secured lending, and tamper-proof record-keeping of smart contracts, document management, and legal services. At our core, Vortex, through our subsidiarity of Liberty Coin Farms, we mine Bitcoins, collecting transaction fees from this new borderless, stateless, anonymous, verifiable, and absolutely unhackable transfer of wealth. Vortex Blockchain Technologies.
We have never been more divided, and no one seems to trust the voting process. The problems we face with our antiquated voting system can be solved with one word: blockchain. With the unique attributes of the blockchain, for the first time, we can have absolute trust. Our voting solution is open sourced and will be peer reviewable. No backdoors, hidden code, or proprietary secrets. Our solution is an asymmetrical, multi-keyed, enveloped data hash algorithm. That means simply that different passwords are used to reveal different portions of the data, which allows you to know with total certainty that your vote was counted exactly as you intended. We will have the prototype by next summer and a public functioning beta test for your smart device by the end of the year. If this sounds like the kind of integrity you'd like to see in our voting system, you too can join with us in making this future a reality. And you can invest in the success of the voting system of tomorrow. Thanks for doing your part.
This is the sound of our current 10,000-page tax code hitting the floor. This is the sound of the proposed fair tax law that eliminates the IRS, all federal payroll taxes, and the dreaded income tax. It's so simple that even a child can understand it, and it untaxes the poor, fully funds the federal government, and supercharges our economy. To win fair tax legislation, the roar of the American people will have to drown out the voices of an army of Washington, D.C. tax lobbyists. We must end the auctioning off of our tax code. Why? Because this is the sound of what is now withheld from your paycheck. And this is the sound of what could be the last penny you ever pay the IRS. Help us write history. What's in it for you? Maybe the last penny you ever pay the IRS.
This message brought to you by iowafairtax.com.
You stuff your pockets while Rome is burning. I've got a feeling that the tide is turning.
This is America's wake-up call.
And we are back for our last and final segment here. As I make a little adjustment on our soundboard. We were right in the middle of going through what are these definitions? Who defines them? What do they mean? And folks, the answer is, as I said in the last segment, it's not the legislature. The legislature is not going to say homeschooling is exempt or put any of these rules in like that. And if they do, the courts will throw them out because a child's right is superior to any legislation that follows it. Once you put that up here, it's you will never get it back. You know, the old thing, right? You got to vote your way into socialism and shoot your way out.
Yeah, you were just talking about definitions, and it's interesting here about, they list all these subjects, which is so bizarre to me. I guess that is the form that we're used to. But it also says, like, and such other subjects as may determined direct by the General Assembly or indirectly, my big part, indirectly by a competent state agency. That's the biggest oxymoron I think I might.
Yeah. Indirectly by a bunch of fascist woke Nazis.
Yeah. Tell me how that's working out for you right now, right?
In anything. How does that work out in any government program you have ever heard of, ever witnessed? How many people out there listening to this have had a passing acquaintance with the Child Protective Services or divorce court?
Right. Competent state agency, which, I mean, so what they're doing here is they're saying we might be getting out of over our skis. Because we as a legislator can't own and operate an education system. How many of those people would say, yes, I'm competent enough to do this? So they've created a job so big that they know that they can't do the job. And so they have to delegate it. And that's where we got the mega education industrial complex that we have today. And
67% of the budget.
Right. And this is not owned and directed by parents in the least. And so parents are very upset. They say we fund this via our taxes. We voted people to run this. But it doesn't represent our interests at all.
Well, the worst part of that competency is they will define you as not having the competency they require. Right. And that won't matter what the legislature said previously because it's now a constitutional right.
Right.
And
defining competency, that, I mean, it's not as if when God gave children to parents, he said, where's your credentials? Right. I was just joking on this with somebody. There was a homeschool issue in another state where the statute says that homeschool parents should have a high school diploma, but there was no requiring proof. And so some of this competent agency probably came in and said, actually, we're going to require everybody to show their diplomas. Like, do you even know where your high school diploma is right now?
Actually, I do know where it is because it's now confession time. I went to a high school for the first couple years that required 32 credits to graduate. Then my parents moved, got divorced, and I ended up at a school that required 40. And I did not have 40, and I did not actually graduate that school. I ended up getting an adult high school diploma at 18 in the military. And it's with my military records, my military certificates. It's not a GED, that's down here. It is a high school diploma.
Right.
Because according to the state of Iowa, I needed 32 credit hours. I had 38 credit hours. The school that I was attending for my junior and senior year required 40 and would not budge on it, wanted me to come back to summer school. And I'd already signed on that dotted line up to and including my life to go serve Uncle Sam. And I said, you guys are freaking nuts. So I fought that system personally.
We're talking about like made up standards by made up offices, and then that's the kind of thing we're holding parents under. And what I'm arguing for is God didn't have that requirement on parents when he gave them as a responsibility. It's the state that does that. And so this kind of thing is just this competent agency and credentialing is just so dangerous to put that in the hands of somebody else.
Well, I think what we're hearing is another bit of our background music. So I must have forgotten that this show is in 5 segments, not 4. And that was our very short segment. So when we come back from this, we'll have our long segment in our closing. It shows you what happens when I do this program only a few times a year instead of every single week. So we'll be right back.
This is America's Wake Up Call. Stay tuned.
Hey, 2350, 2355, 55, 2360. Do I hear 65, 65, 65, 70, now 75, 75, 80, and sold to the gentleman in the back room.
Our taxes are so complicated that even the IRS answers questions wrong almost half the time. That's because of decades of auctioning off our tax code into the hands of an army of Washington lobbyists. There must be a better way. And there is. The fair tax is a simple national sales tax that replaces the income tax and fully funds all government operations, including Social Security and Medicare. The fair tax ends all payroll withholding taxes while lowering most people's tax rates.
Take item 23 and apply a 28% premium after subtracting item 19 unless, of course, it's Thursday and a leap year, but only if Schedule F indicates sunspot activity on depreciation.
Help us win a better way. Together, we can write history. What's in it for you? Maybe the last penny you ever pay the IRS. Brought to you by Americans for Fair Taxation.
From the heartland of America's Silicon Prairie, powered by megawatts of green energy, Vortex strives to become the world's premier blockchain hardware and software development technology company. Rapidly approaching $1 trillion of worldwide value, the blockchain is a distributed ledger providing 21st century banking services, capital asset exchange, secured lending, and tamper-proof record-keeping of smart contracts, document management, and legal services. At our core, Vortex, through our subsidiarity of Liberty Coin Farms, we mine Bitcoins, collecting transaction fees from this new, borderless, stateless, anonymous, verifiable, and absolutely unhackable transfer of wealth. Vortex Blockchain Technologies.
You stuff your pockets while Rome is burning. I've got a feeling that the tide is turning.
This is America's wake-up call.
Okay, now this is our final segment. We are back for it here. Have we ran through everything we've needed to on what's in the bill, and we're ready to slay the dragon?
Consequences could be limitless, so I won't say that we've done everything, but I think we've done it sufficiently enough to move on.
I hope you listening and will read my post later on this commentary have a good enough understanding of what it is and why it must die. And I think the point we were looking at off screen over here is, we talked about it in one of the previous sections, that a right is not something that comes with money or control over people. Okay? You have a right to peaceably assemble, not protest. And those of you who've been watching my commentary on there, yeah. If you're yelling or screaming at people, if you're throwing rocks at cars, if you're kicking out taillights, if you're spitting on people, that's not a mostly peaceful protest. Okay, those words are like jumbo shrimp and army intelligence. They don't belong in the same sentence. We have peaceful assembly, and then we have protests. It doesn't matter what the protest is, how the protest is. It's unlawful protest.
Well, what you're talking about is you never have the right to somebody else's things, possession, space. And in this,
or to disrupt their peace.
Right. So that belongs to them. And for you to trespass or to damage their private property is, you can never have a right that takes a right from somebody else away. We have boundaries, and that's what our government is instituted to protect, boundaries.
Yes.
And so
thank God Trump knows how to use the sword. I mean, that's really what it is. The government was given a sword for a purpose. Paul outlines it very clearly.
Well, nobody ever talks about the people that's property is destroyed or whose towns are destroyed. Like, do they have a right to their work, to their life, to their liberty, to their happiness? Or
they're insured.
Well, right.
The government taxpayers will pay for it.
I know it's easier to file an insurance claim but what we have lost is a system of justice and respect for justice.
That's exactly what we have. And these guys want to take that a step further. They want your children. They want your family destroyed. And they will do it if this passes. So you need to pick up the phone to your legislature. I don't have the numbers handy. I'm sorry. I don't have an office assistant to be doing all this background work. There's nobody in the booth back over there. So Lauren called me up last night and said, "Do you want to do this thing?" And I was like, heck yes, let's get this out there. So
Craig,
we're winging it.
This is the age of Google. So I totally trust that your listeners are confident to look up a phone number because
my listeners are, yes,
it needs to be done. And I think what we're going to talk about too is if that's the wrong paradigm for thinking about this, what is the right paradigm for how we should think about these issues? Because our actions should be downstream from a proper paradigm of thinking about what is education, who does it belong to, how should it be executed, those types of things. So how should people think about this issue?
Well, you're going to get my view, which is I'm an abolitionist. I'm an abolitionist on life. I'm an abolitionist on income taxes, property taxes, and public education, all of which happened to come out in the progressive era at the turn of the last century. And I've been against them ever since I discovered this history and truth around 16, 17, 18 years old in high school, which I hated moving to that school, and said, this is terrible. I don't like these people. I don't like what they're doing. I don't like what they're telling me. And my rebel nature said, what's the other story?
Yeah.
And then I said, oh, this is way worse than I thought. I've been brainwashed and indoctrinated. Well, now I, as they said in the Tombstone, now I really hate it.
Oh.
So I'm an abolitionist, and I believe, and I think the governors in their debate, two of them, I think Adam and Zach, Adam Steen and Zach Lane, both said a number like 5% of the public education students are the trouble, and 95% just go through the system.
Go through the system. That's
So,
not like quality education.
Yeah, it's the lowest common denominator. But my idea is simple then. Great, cut the budget 95%, give that back to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Don't send any strings along with it. Don't have it come out of a budget. Don't take it and dole it back out. Stop taking it.
I like
Cut
that.
our $9 billion budget down to 3.5.
Right? Think of the
Okay.
economy boost that would have. If we have
Think-
economy issues and all of our money is trapped, we know the private market can do a much better job with those resources.
Think how many people would not leave Iowa
Yeah.
if we cut our taxes 60%.
And we're not just talking Iowa or Iowans. We're talking businesses, job providers for all those people.
Oh, yeah,
Our
well-
economy would explode. Like it's such an amazing experiment. It'll never be done, at least probably not in my lifetime. But there's no reason on paper why it shouldn't be tried.
Well, here's the thing on that, and I'm gonna grab both topics here real quick. Number one, never say never.
Yeah.
Okay, when I signed on that dotted line and put on my little uniform, I thought I was gonna go into Iran because it had just fallen and Reagan was very tough, and we had problems with our bases in Lebanon then being supported by the mullahs, and they turned Lebanon from the Paris of the Middle East into, Beirut is now synonymous with a hellhole you cannot escape. And so, am I hearing my music come back in again? Maybe I have 6 segments on this program. Gosh dang it, I'm not sure what's happening with this. I hope I'm not out of time for the whole hour, because we've got a lot more to go back over here. But we're going to pick up that abolition here either right following this or in a whole new segment if we have to. Stay tuned, folks.
This is America's Wake Up Call. Stay tuned.
This is the sound of our current 10,000-page tax code hitting the floor. This is the sound of the proposed fair tax law that eliminates the IRS, all federal payroll taxes, and the dreaded income tax. It's so simple that even a child can understand it, and it untaxes the poor, fully funds the federal government, and supercharges our economy. To win fair tax legislation, the roar of the American people will have to drown out the voices of an army of Washington, D.C. tax lobbyists. We must end the auctioning off of our tax code. Why? Because this is the sound of what is now withheld from your paycheck. And this is the sound of what could be the last penny you ever pay the IRS. Help us write history. What's in it for you? Maybe the last penny you ever pay the IRS.
This message brought to you by iowafairtax.com.
You stuff your pockets while Rome is burning. I've got a feeling that the tide is turning.
This is America's Wake Up Call.
Well, that definitely was the 2-segment program. It's amazing how fast an hour goes. So we're picking it up for hour 2 on the format. It's been a long time since I've ran the clock, and my clock up on the wall there. Definitely, we need to put a new battery in it. hasn't survived the new year. So with that said, since we are at the top segment of the second program, I'm not going to do it as two programs. I'm just going to do it as one long program. So when you're watching this and you hear me talking about two programs, you say, what? Never mind. This is an internal dialogue. You're with it. So for this segment, we were talking about the abolition. And so I'm just going to jump right into that and talk about it. I was saying the governor's program had 5% of the problems, 95% were not. And it just, as soon as I heard that number, immediately I said, yeah, great. Public education then should be for the 5%.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's take every high school, grade school, elementary school, school district. I think there's 318, something like that number in Iowa. Somebody with Google can correct me, but my memory is close enough for government work, as they say. So competent enough for government work. There, I borrowed their language. 318 school districts. Great. Passed one bill in the legislature that says something along the following. All these schools will be privatized.
Yeah.
All their assets will be audited and evaluated. It will be given a fair market price.
Yeah.
And then a number of shares will be issued by the legislature for sale only to the registered voters in that, taxpayers in that school district. And they will have the first right to buy as many or all of them as they can. And if they oversell, it will be a lottery so that everyone gets an equal chance and an equal say in owning those shares. Once they're sold, and it's a corporation, it's in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else can go and say, oh, you paid $10 for that Ogden school district. I give you $35. And you go, oh, I just made a $400 profit. I'm gonna sell them. Great, God bless you. You no longer have a say in how that corporation runs. Now, the state can still say, because it controls corporations, it controls licensing, it controls taxation, it controls permits. We're not giving it over to some anarchy. I'm not an anarchist, right? I have a Ron Paul background. As many of you know, I was his national political director for 2 years, 2007, 2008. Was part of the whole Revolution thing that happened there. But, you know, very pragmatic on this issue. And if we just take those school districts, privatize them at market value. So if you got a $25 million stadium and a $100 million valuated school, right? You got $100 million, $1 shares. Let's see where the market goes. Right. That's how RPIs go to our IPOs. Gosh, I got so many acronyms. Government there. IPOs go to market all the time. But you were saying?
I mean, as far as giving authority and power back to parents, then, I mean, the free market gives the power to the consumer.
Yeah.
And so you can definitely take your money where you want to go, and then you retain that money. And, you know, I even have this idea of, you know, I personally, through my employer, have an HSA where both me and my employer contribute to this benefits, a tax sheltered savings account. Like, why not make ESAs, which are now publicly funded, privatize them? Say, yeah, as a benefit for working for this employer, we're both contributing to an education fund that I could use at any of these private education schools. I mean, it's set up, and that's a perk of being here because we value employees that value their family. It makes perfect sense to me. There's a lot of ways to skin this cat, so to speak. I think we've completely ignored the fact that the church may have a role to play in that 5% as well. Historically, the church did a fabulous job of stepping in, understanding that philanthropy was commissioned by God to the church and in taking care of the needs of the community. And so if we could imagine a vision of what that looks like, we're not actually too far departed from that.
That, I think the point you made right there is the key point. It's been 100 years of this socialist indoctrination, probably 110 by now. I think when you go by most high schools, it says something like, you know, established 1910, 1918, 1906. You don't see any high schools or anything that says established 1852. They didn't have those buildings and those things happening back then. But you were saying how, And say it again. I want to get your point exactly right.
I wish you knew which prayer you're talking about.
I love that when we're live on radio. You just said that's what you got to roll with. But
we had to reimagine it, and I think what you're alluding right now is this paradigm has been deeply ingrained. And so if we realize if we've been indoctrinated, we have to repent, and we have to turn around and figure out what about the way we think about this should we think about this, and then we should rethink that thing. And so part of what my work is propagating a truthful paradigm. So you were talking about abolition, like that's
yeah,
great.
I got where the point was, and it's that we're not that far removed.
Oh, yes.
That is the key point. I want people to understand that they have had a stranglehold of us, our arms tied behind our back, and they haven't made much progress because it's hard to swim against liberty. It's hard to swim against the truth. It's hard to swim against parent-child in the image Deo, Christ, God the Father, image bound. This is a hard thing to break. Your Indiana socialist guy couldn't do it. The Prussians lost their empire and later became Hitler's Germany.
Yeah.
And now our socialist green Germany shutting off their nuclear plants and not buying any Russian oil because, and they're freezing to death in the winter. I mean, it's just they're turning themselves to a third world country in 100 ways because they are hell bent to be right on socialism, not just to be right in function. But we haven't lost what makes Iowa great. We haven't lost that bond. We haven't lost that understanding. We've operated within their system, but kind of keeping our own rules. So I think the path to abolition is a lot shorter than people would think it is. I'm an optimist in that regard.
I think you're right. I'm reminded of, I think it was the Cato letters in the 1600s. They were talking about like one of the greatest threats to tyranny is just people don't really like the effects of tyranny. They're only going to handle it for so long before they reject it. And I think we're coming to the end of that experiment where people are like, a complete government-owned and operated indoctrination system may not be in our best interest. And so that's why, like, in my paradigm, it's like, let's advocate for the thing that made America and Iowa great in the first place is independence. And independence, there's a couple different facets of it that we need to consider because we can think about all the ways it's been infringed. And so my 4 ways I like to think about this is independent parents, commissioned by God for the work that they have. And until they have an injustice, they retain those rights. And then we have ways of due process and to come in and intervene when injustices happen to restore justice. But we need independent parents. We need independent funding because we know funding is ownership. They go hand in hand. And if you want to retain ownership of that thing, private property is it. Hayek said private property is the key to freedom for everybody, not just for the people that have private property. I butchered the quote, but the point is we have to understand that our life, we have to own it to have governance over it. And so that funding is a key component. So independent parents, independent funding, independent pursuits. And this is where I'm going to get into the fact that all education, it's not necessarily this cold scientific abstract thing. I guess it was kind of listed that way in the amendment. But in my family, education is about soul work. It's about getting into the claims about ontology, about the way the world is. It's about our theology and it's about our anthropology, and all of these things are predicated on deeply religious claims. And you'll find even in the government indoctrination centers, they're basing their education on religious claims as well. They're not very explicit about it, but this idea of secular education is a complete farce. Even secular humanism by the Supreme Court is in a note somewhere defined as a religion of itself.
I think you have a great point there I want to grab before we get too down into some of the weeds there. And this is something people don't understand about the left. Okay? We used to have this thing in America where we had 2 parties, the right and the left, the Republicans and the Democrats, and they all agreed on God. They all agreed on morals. They all agreed on liberty, and they had a disagreement over how best to do so. But what has happened to the left is that any of those people were kicked out of the party. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Jesse Jackson and Al Gore ran for president against my guy, whom I worked for as a young man, Jack Kemp. 1987, and Jesse Jackson and Al Gore were pro-life. Al Gore's wife is the one who wanted to put stickers on heavy metal rock albums because they did things that were ungodly and put warning stickers on them. That was Al Gore's wife. So the left has a morality. It is just no longer a Christian morality. And I think we're here now at our next break, and that's a perfect opportunity to pause on that and come back for more. So stay tuned.
This is America's Wake Up Call. Stay tuned.
Hey, 2350, 2355, 55, 2360. Do I hear 65, 65, 65, 70, now 75, 75, 80, and sold to the gentleman in the back room.
Our taxes are so complicated that even the IRS answers questions wrong almost half the time. That's because of decades of auctioning off our tax code into the hands of an army of Washington lobbyists. There must be a better way. And there is. The fair tax is a simple national sales tax that replaces the income tax and fully funds all government operations, including Social Security and Medicare. The fair tax ends all payroll withholding taxes while lowering most people's tax rates.
Take item 23 and apply a 28% premium after subtracting item 19, unless, of course, it's Thursday and a leap year, but only if Schedule F indicates sunspot activity on depreciation.
Help us win a better way. Together, we can write history. What's in it for you? Maybe the last penny you ever pay the IRS. Brought to you by Americans for Fair Taxation.
From the heartland of America's Silicon Prairie. Powered by megawatts of green energy. Vortex strives to become the world's premier blockchain hardware and software development technology company. Rapidly approaching $1 trillion of worldwide value, the blockchain is a distributed ledger providing 21st century banking services, capital asset exchange, secured lending, and tamper-proof record-keeping of smart contracts, document management, and legal services. At our core, Vortex, through our subsidiarity of Liberty Coin Farms, we mine Bitcoins, collecting transaction fees from this new borderless, stateless, anonymous, verifiable, and absolutely unhackable transfer of wealth. Vortex Blockchain Technologies.
We have never been more divided, and no one seems to trust the voting process. The problems we face with our antiquated voting system can be solved with one word: blockchain. With the unique attributes of the blockchain, for the first time, we can have absolute trust. Our voting solution is open sourced and will be peer reviewable. No backdoors, hidden code, or proprietary secrets. Our solution is an asymmetrical, multi-keyed, enveloped data hash algorithm. That means simply that different passwords are used to reveal different portions of the data, which allows you to know with total certainty that your vote was counted exactly as you intended. We will have the prototype by next summer and a public functioning beta test for your smart device by the end of the year. If this sounds like the kind of integrity you'd like to see in our voting system, you too can join with us in making this future a reality. And you can invest in the success of the voting system of tomorrow. Thanks for doing your part.
You stuff your pockets while Rome is burning. I've got a feeling that the tide is turning.
This is America's Wake Up Call.
And we are back, and I think our our consensus is we're going to continue to pick up that last segment we were just in, talking about the problems with, well, what we're dealing with here and how this has come to be. And we were talking offline a little, and I'm going to promote it because I love Robert. Robert, you got a great new book out here, and it's very obvious that your director here has read it well, internalized it well, and I will now highly recommend it to people who are out there. It's bring it a little closer to the screen for folks. There you go. It's called Woke and Weaponized by Robert Bortons and Alex Newman. I don't know who Alex is, but if he's a friend of Robert's, he's a friend of mine.
Well, you're gonna have to look him up because you'll love him. He runs the Liberty Sentinel. He's an independent journalist. Does fabulous work on globalist issues, and especially in the education space. And he is a good friend to CC and to Robert. So definitely appreciate his contributions, both of theirs, on just telling the story. I think we forget sometimes we're always nested within a story. And what is that story? Stories have beginnings, middles, ends, all sorts of things. And if you don't know how you got to where you're at, it's really hard to get yourself back on track. And so it's a good detailed story. It even talks about some of the things we were talking about, solutions. Like It's not enough to be the problem finders. Everybody knows a problem finder. They're kind of obnoxious sometimes. Okay, so what is it to identify a problem, but be able to propose actual solutions with methods of integrity and that don't compromise the good that you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think the point I was making in the last segment about it's close. We have to think back to the quote of Winston Churchill. And he said, if you won't fight when the odds are in your favor, there may come a time when you have to fight with all the odds against you. And there may yet come a time where you have to fight and there is no chance to win, but it is better to perish than to live as a slave. And I am that America. That's what I signed on the dotted line, as they say. And I don't know what the majority of America is anymore, but I'm going to have some faith that that root is there. And I'm going to go back to the point I was making about religion and the left. Because the left is now more religious, more zealous, more committed to their false religion and their God, Satan. Notice I move my mouth away so you can see that very clearly. Than we are to Jesus. Okay? They are in the streets. They are ready to die. They are, in fact, dying. And they're not doing that because they're necessarily just crazy. And I say the word just crazy because they're crazy. But they're doing it because they're true believers.
Right. There's a religious paradigm that undergirds the direction that we go. And a religious paradigm gets passed down from one generation to another generation. The question is how. And I'd argue that our education institutions are the propagation tool for that religious dissemination. And so we should argue, like, if all education is undergirded by a religious philosophy of some sort, whether it's explicit or implicit, every school then is a religious institution. So we have serious First Amendment questions, and first person to raise alarm on that. Every school then is propagating religion, so every school can potentially be violating the First Amendment. There is no non-sectarian education. Jeffrey Chumala is a law professor at Liberty University. He wrote a giant paper, dissertation, I don't know what they call it, but much smarter than I am, and unpack that we have a serious constitutional issue here. And I think it has come from, what Jesus said, by their fruits you shall know them. We are now reaping fruits. We're like, I know what kind of tree this is. Like, I might have been confused for a while. 2026, nobody should be confused that this is a religious movement predicated on religious themes, and it's funded by compulsory taxation. We didn't even talk about the Virginia religious freedom statute written by Jefferson. I can't remember, But it said like, no man should be compelled to fund ideas that violate his conscience. That's what freedom of religion really is. And here in America, we have taxpayers that are compelled to
65%.
fund religious paradigms that are in
Violent
diametric
opposition, yes.
opposition to their own belief system. And so it's a serious liberty issue. It's a serious freedom of religion issue. And that's actually, to your point on the abolition side, if people should only fund religious paradigms that are in alignment with their conscience, we have to privatize education.
Yeah, we have to. It has to be abolished. It's the only solution, the only answer to the problem. And then public education is that 5% for the people who are, by their own actions, adjudicated into a system involuntarily because they have failed at the private responsibility system.
Self-governance and all those things.
The same thing as jail.
Yeah.
Same thing as probation. The same thing as if you screw up something, you're put in a corrective situation. And that's what those schools should be. That is the role of government to deal with, we got to say it, bad people. We make bad parental choices, bad marriage choices, bad business choices, bad choices to steal from people. You make a bad choice, the government steps in and says, we'll give you a second chance. You make another bad choice and the government steps in and says, okay, now you're making rocks for the county gravel roads.
Right.
Which we should be doing and not giving them, library access and pornography and everything else in the prisons. But we digress if we take that path too far. But there was another point you were making, and I was trying to capture it before I went down that frame. So this topic is so deep and so ingrained and so detrimental that there are 100 threads, and trying to grab them all. I think I want to just grab one that's obvious because it's in the news and it goes back to the heart, and we'll see where it goes from there. But Iran is 47 years removed from their liberty. And look at what they're doing. 10, maybe 20, maybe 25,000 of them in the last month this year have willingly laid down their lives to bring freedom back to their brothers, their sisters, their family. And the left is, well, number one, they're totally opposed to that because they're trying to restore a Western Christian way of life, even if it's disastrous or, whatever their old religion was. It's not Islam, and it's liberty-minded and open and fair. And the left, their religion is not. Their religion is socialism, one size fits all, and destructive to liberty. We saw that with COVID. That's kind of how you and I got involved in politics together, and where I first met you and the other two ladies when we took that road trip to the convention.
Good points. I think you bring up an excellent point. The liberty has a cost.
Yeah.
And I think we need to see ourselves back in a narrative and a story of if liberty always has a cost, and each generation will pay a cost. What is our opportunity to contribute to the cause? I think in the education place, just being self-governed, self-funded, and understanding this degree of independence that you're preserving isn't necessarily about you and your family. It's about the idea of liberty as a whole. And if we maintain these boundaries for our generation and expand them or retake them, what's been lost, it's not just a sacrifice for liberty again in our generation. It's to the idea as a whole that transcends generations.
That is really it, folks. And I think we're near running out of our ideas here, and we'll start to drift off. So I think I'm going to try to wrap up with this section here and end our program. 2 sections longer than we anticipated it being, but very good to have you on as a guest. Thank you for reaching out to me and calling me late last night and saying, do you want to do this crazy thing? And I said, oh, yes, I wish to come to this little studio here, dust the dust off of this component, and I'd love to do it more often. So I'm going to put an invitation out there right now to all 5 of the gubernatorial candidates. If you'd like to sit in the chair in the green room and talk about your issues, If anyone else has anything they would like to talk about, I'm going to say welcome to 2026. Thank you for kicking off what may be a revitalized little podcast we have going here at America's Wake Up Call.
I can plug my website quick too. It's www.chooseeducationindependence.com. Learn more about education independence there. Thank you for having me, Craig.
This is America's Wake Up Call.